In a dark corner, he found a streetwalker. As the woman began to undress, he quietly raised the stick in his hand. Immediately, he cruelly cut off the woman's hair, then tightly wrapped the corpse in a cloth smeared with lard. He waited for several hours until the lard completely absorbed the woman's body sun. Then he picked up a knife and carefully scraped it off bit by bit, cautiously collecting it. This was the third girl that Gray had harmed. Such perverse and appalling methods were merely to collect the girl's body scent for the legendary mysterious 13 spices. Gray lost his parents at a young age and grew up alone in an orphanage. He possessed an extraordinary sense of smell, able to accurately identify everything around him even with his eyes closed. At the age of 13, he was sold by the director to the leather factory owner for a mere 7 francs. In that hellish leather factory, Gray stubbornly endured for a full 10 years, during which he developed a strong and muscular physique. By chance, he was sent to the city to deliver goods, and this trip seemed to open a door to a whole new world for him. The smell of sweat from the horses, the fragrance of the rouge applied by noble women, the fishy scent of seafood, and the various perfumes in the shops, Gray greedily inhaled it all. Suddenly, a unique and distinct fragrance jolted his mind. After a desperate search, he discovered that the scent came from a red-haired girl selling apricots. The aroma was like a gentle spring breeze softly brushing over the long dry earth, instantly awakening Gray's deep-seated desire. The girl was frightened by his actions, but seeing Gray's dazed expression, she gradually relaxed her guard and kindly handed him 2 apricots. But who would have thought that Gray would suddenly grab her hand, frantically sucking in the scent that captivated him deeply. This lewd behavior terrified the girl, causing her to panic and flee, leaving Gray standing there in a daze, feeling lost. However, this stubborn and unwavering man did not give up. Following the lingering scent, he pursued it all the way to the girl's home. Gray quietly approached the girl again, and to prevent her from making a sound, he tightly covered her mouth and nose with his hand until she stopped struggling. Looking at the girl who had turned into a corpse before him, Gray felt no panic at all. Instead, he untied her corseted dress and began to greedily suck in the fragrance emanating from every inch of her skin. At that moment, Gray felt an unprecedented sense of immense satisfaction, even wishing to completely possess this body. However, as the girl's corpse gradually grew cold, he noticed that the enchanting scent began to dissipate slowly. This filled Gray with an inexplicable sense of defeat. Afterward, the absentee who went to steal the fragrance was discovered by the boss, followed by a severe lesson. The sharp pain in his body made Gray yearn even more for the beauty brought by that fleeting glimpse. Thus, a strong thought quietly sprouted in his mind. He would do everything possible to preserve that scent. One day, Gray noticed a perfume store by chance. The owner, Old Joe, seemed to be in trouble. The perfume concocted by his competitor had become a sensation throughout Paris, while Old Joe's perfume was selling poorly. Old Joe tried to crack the competitor's formula but could never find the corresponding ingredients. After hearing this, Gray decided to lend him a helping hand. In just a few seconds, he accurately found the spices needed for the formula on the shelf. When Old Joe was surprised by this, Gray boasted that he could concoct a better perfume in just 1 minute. Saying this, he unhesitatingly removed the cork from the spices and began to roughly mix various spices together, shaking the bottle violently afterward. This action made Old Joe panic. He simply did not believe that Gray could make perfume and thought Gray knew nothing. Although he had already denied Gray in his heart, he still held a glimmer of hope and symbolically took a sniff. The result of this sniff made Old Joe's face instantly turn extremely ugly. It turned out that in the face of talent, hard work was so vulnerable. At the same time, he secretly resolved to capture this exceptionally gifted genius in front of him. The next day, Old Joe found the leather factory owner and redeemed Gray for 50 francs. However, the leather owner, after receiving the money, mysteriously died shortly thereafter. Perhaps this was truly heaven's favor for the genius. All those who abandoned Gray would inevitably meet with accidental death. With Gray's help, Old Joe continuously launched several hit perfumes, not only successfully defeating his competitor but also making a fortune. In return, Old Joe began to teach Gray about perfume. A classic perfume must have top notes, middle notes, and base notes. The top notes are the initial experience people have, usually lasting only a few minutes. The middle notes are the core theme of the perfume, which can linger for several hours. And the base notes are the lingering scent, generally lasting several days. Most current perfumes are made from 12 types of spices, but it is said that there is a 13th spice in the world, which can be used to concoct a timeless perfume. Upon hearing this, Gray immediately thought of that girl. It turned out that the girl's body scent was the legendary 13th spice, which was exactly the beauty he desperately wanted to preserve. Finally, Old Joe began to teach Gray the extraction method. Placing tens of thousands of fresh roses in a distillation barrel could only yield a small bottle of rose essential oil. The entire process left Gray both amazed and feeling cruel. The roses, carrying their fragrance, faded away but were reborn in another way. Although the method changed, the fragrance became even more lasting. This greatly benefited Gray. He immediately put a cat into the distillation box, hoping to extract its scent, but when Old Joe learned of this, he struck him with a blow, telling him that animal scents could not be extracted through distillation. Struck down, Gray fainted and subsequently fell seriously ill. In desperation, Old Joe had to tell Gray that there was an oil extraction method in the perfume capital of Grass, which might extract more fragrance. But as a condition of exchange, he required Gray to leave behind 100 perfume formulas. However, for Gray, who had absolute olfactory senses, this was undoubtedly a piece of cake. After doing all this, he set off alone, leaving Old Joe, who was overjoyed with the formulas. Just as Old Joe fantasized about making a fortune from this, the house suddenly collapsed, and Old Joe unfortunately died. All those who abandoned Gray indeed did not have a good ending. On the other hand, Gray, on his journey, suddenly realized that his body had lost its scent at some point. To Gray, scent was equivalent to a person's soul. Losing it meant the end of life. Thinking of this, Gray became even more urgent. He had to extract the legendary 13th spice. Afterward, Gray went to a flower factory to learn the oil extraction method. This method involved wrapping fresh petals in lard, and after the fat thoroughly absorbed the fragrance, the flower scent was extracted through boiling. After understanding the entire process, Gray set his sights on a flower picker in the factory. He cruelly killed her and then soaked her in a container full of lard. However, Gray's first experiment still failed. This made him realize that soaking was the key to oil extraction. Thus, he spared no effort and found a streetwalker. Watching him take out the lard and evenly apply it to himself, the woman thought Gray had some special fetish. It wasn't until she saw him take out a curved knife that she began to panic. The woman decisively refused this deal. Just as she turned to put on her clothes, Gray quietly raised the hammer, and the woman met her demise. After that, Gray cut off her hair and tightly wrapped the body with gauze soaked in lard. Hours later, when the lard had completely absorbed the woman's body scent, he carefully collected it. Then, Gray made a simple oil extraction device and quickly extracted the scent from the fat by heating it to a high temperature. To test the results, he dropped some of the collected essential oil on his hand, and the woman's puppy quickly ran over after smelling it. Seeing all this, Gray knew he had finally succeeded. He excitedly found 12 perfume bottles and decided to fill them with the body scent of 12 young girls. Gray soon set his sights on a pair of twins who had noble blood and were untouched maidens, which would undoubtedly make the body scent even richer. Gray repeated the process and quickly harvested 2 more bottles of essential oil. Afterwards, he casually threw the body into the river. Although this caused panic among the citizens, Gray showed no signs of stopping. Within just a few days, 10 young girls were murdered in the small town, all of whom had their long hair shaved off and bore no wounds. More critically, they were all untouched maidens. The nobles could not understand the killer's motive, so they decided to impose a curfew. For a time, the townspeople closed their doors, afraid to let their daughters go out easily. The count, who was also a noble, was equally worried because he had a beautiful daughter. Little did he know, Gray had already targeted his daughter, but due to the tight security, he had not found an opportunity to strike. In desperation, he turned his attention to the convent, where he abducted and killed a nun. Things began to get serious. The count knew that this could not go on, so he decided to take his daughter away. To avoid drawing attention, he took the disguise pole and escaped through a back road. However, Gray's sense of smell was extremely sharp, and he quickly noticed that Paul's scent was gradually fading. So, he hurriedly packed his things and chased after them. Meanwhile, the street girl's puppy also followed the scent and found Gray's residence. It quickly dug up its owner's clothes from the ground. Following the clues, people soon unearthed the remaining victim's clothing. Now, Gray's identity as the killer was confirmed. On the other side, Gray followed the scent to the inn where the woman was staying. Under the cover of night, he successfully infiltrated. Because he had no body odor, even the hunting dogs outside did not detect him. The next day, when the Count opened the door again, he completely broke down. Paul was lying on the bed in a beautiful pose, with no hair and already lifeless. At that moment, Gray was extremely excited. As soon as he left the inn, he eagerly extracted Paul's body scent and carefully mixed the 12 bottles of essence together. Thus, the unparalleled 13 scents were born. Meanwhile, the soldiers pursuing him happened to appear. Gray secretly hid the 13 scents and calmly raised his hands. Gray's actions had already stirred the anger of the Parisian populace, who gathered at the execution site, hoping to witness the fall of this devil. Yet at that moment, Gray remained incredibly calm. He slowly opened the perfume bottle, and the fragrance that overflowed easily controlled the soldiers. The soldiers not only brought him splendid clothing but also sent a carriage to take him to the execution site. This surprised the onlookers, as a murderer could receive such treatment. But as Gray approached the carriage, the soldier opening the door knelt down directly, his devout demeanor as if he had seen God. The crowd, who had been furious just a second ago, became infatuated the next. They watched Gray ascend the execution platform, and as the mysterious 13 scents spread around him, the executioner dropped his weapon and knelt before Gray with a thud. Seeing all this, Gray knew his 13 scents had succeeded. He quickly took out a handkerchief and poured 2 drops of perfume on it. As he gently waved it, the unique fragrance immediately spread. When the scents of the 12 young girls entered the minds of the crowd, they erupted in unprecedented fervor. Everyone was intoxicated by this irresistible charm. Even the high-ranking bishop was deeply affected. Watching the scene of thousands worshipping, Gray felt an unprecedented sense of satisfaction. But as he released the handkerchief, he realized that what people were following was not him, but the scarf stained with the 13 scents. This undoubtedly struck Gray like a bolt from the blue. Moreover, as the middle notes of the perfume began to spread, people became dazed and began to engage in naked entanglements in broad daylight. Gray stared in disbelief, his eyes wide open. His 13 scents did not bring the praise and worship he had envisioned, but instead triggered a moral depravity. He looked at all this with a heavy heart. A wave of unprecedented despair surged within him. In a daze, he remembered the girl selling apricots, her fresh and refined demeanor contrasting sharply with the decay of this perfume. He felt he had betrayed that beauty, and the regret in his heart surged like a tide. When people woke up, Gray had long since disappeared. They selectively forgot this shameful memory and instead found a scapegoat, hastily ending this sin. Gray wandered alone in the night, his inner remorse and confusion intertwining. He began to doubt his pursuits. Those scents that once captivated him now only remained as hollow irony. Now, he just wanted to find a corner to escape reality. Looking at the homeless gathered at the street corner, he suddenly realized that perhaps that was his ultimate destination. He took out the 13 spices and poured them all over his head. Upon smelling the fragrance, people's eyes lit up again, and they rushed towards Gray eagerly. Accompanied by waves of irresistible love, Gray was thus devoured. Thus, the film ends. This is not just a movie about murder and perfume. It is a work that deeply explores themes of human nature, desire, morality, and self-existence. Through the unique character of Gray, we see the darkness and light within humanity. It turns out that desire is the driving force that propels people forward. Those who sell counterfeit goods for profit or sabotage for appreciation are all blinded by desire, which is also a weakness of human nature. It compels us to deeply reflect on our inner selves while appreciating the beauty of art. In this era of rampant materialism, can we uphold our moral bottom line? Can we pursue our self-worth without being swayed by desire?